Today, we're looking into something really quite unsettling. We're talking about real-life stories of obsession and stalking. We've pulled these from some first-hand accounts we received, and honestly, they're pretty intense. Not for the faint of heart.
No, definitely not. And what's really striking, I think, isn't just the immediate danger, although that's obviously huge. It's the way these situations build up, slowly sometimes. How they just completely erode a person's feeling of safety. Their whole world shrinks.
Yeah, so we're going to look at how these things unfolded, like the pattern from maybe feeling a bit uncomfortable to, well, absolute terror.
Exactly.
Okay, so our goal here is to kind of pull out the key takeaways from these accounts, to really understand the red flags, maybe the patterns, and the psychological impact, And when someone gets fixated like this.
It's that unhealthy fixation, yeah. What drives it and what it does to the person on the receiving end.
Right. So we start with a story from a guy who was only 19, moved into his first apartment, thought he was in a decent, safe neighborhood. But then his upstairs neighbor, Jen, she turned his life into a nightmare pretty quickly.
And what's fascinating in a disturbing way is how fast the boundaries get pushed.
Yeah.
It starts with her asking for his number because her boyfriend got arrested, but then, boom, straight into really direct, really inappropriate comments and actions.
Yeah, she didn't waste any time. And then it got really bad. Drunk calls, insulting his girlfriend, and then banging on his door at 2 a.m, screaming, crying. Police show up.
And she tells him a completely different story.
Totally fabricated, claimed that they'd been intimate, that he kicked her out.
And that's such a common tactic, isn't it? Flipping the script, making the victim look like the aggressor. It confuses things, makes it harder for the real victim. The police search his place, find nothing, obviously. But the damage is done. That feeling of being violated in your own space.
Oh, it gets so much worse. He comes home from work one day. His apartment is spotless, like cleaned top to bottom. His stuff is organized. There are fresh cookies on the table.
Oh, wow.
And Jen is in his bed, naked, saying just horrifying things like, shove your fink in me until I cry.
Jesus.
Yeah.
That's not just trespassing. That's a complete psychological invasion.
He just ran.
I'm terrified.
Called the police again. She gets arrested, but for, minor stuff. Breaking and entering, maybe trespassing.
Right, but those charges hardly capture the reality of it. The cleaning, the cookies.
Yeah.
It's this incredibly twisted attempt at forcing intimacy, asserting control, making his safe space her space.
And it just went on for weeks. Constant knocking, arguing with his friends, his girlfriend. She even tried to get his girlfriend, Sue, to leave him and move in with her. Suggested they could be like a, quote, lesbian Bonnie and Clyde.
It just shows the depth of the obsession. The complete inability to handle rejection and these bizarre, desperate attempts to weave herself into his life, no matter how inappropriate, is pure delusion.
So eventually she gets evicted. But even then, she makes a huge scene. Paints her upper body and face bright pink, wears a green bikini top while they're dragging her out, gets arrested again.
Just chaos.
He moves far away, gets an unlisted number, new address, thinking it's over.
But it wasn't.
Nope. Months later, she's at his new door. She followed him home from his new job. Another arrest.
That persistence, across time, across distance, it's truly chilling. It shows how deep that fixation runs, way beyond normal boundaries. Legal stuff barely slows it down sometimes.
And it didn't stop there. Years go by. MySpace requests start popping up. Then these long, rambling emails with no punctuation, Facebook messages. Then she finds his ex-girlfriend, Sue, at her job, contacts her, and then finds his little brother, who's in college 3 states away, shows up at his dorm.
No way.
Yeah. His brother's boss actually had to physically remove her from a bar, punched her, knocked out 2 teeth. She ends up getting found mentally incompetent, placed in a facility.
That long arc, over a decade, it points to really severe mental illness driving this. And the legal finding of mentally incompetent confirms that.
Yeah.
It means the court saw she couldn't understand the charges or help her defense because of her mental state. Delusions, maybe psychosis.
The story finally ends, sort of, in 2012. Her counselor calls him, asks if he'll help Jen put her past behind her.
Wow. The burden's still falling on him.
Right. He's married now, has a kid. He says no. A year later, Jen commits suicide. Jumps off a cliff in Arizona.
Oh, man.
And the guy who told the story, he still wonders. He said, part of me wonders what I did to cause this. I literally never did anything out of the ordinary. Just shows you.
Yeah, that self-blame is so common for victims. Even though it's completely unfounded, it just highlights the tragedy, the complexity. Sometimes these obsessions are just intractable. A really devastating outcome for everyone involved.
Okay, so shifting gears a bit. Our next story really highlights how digital tools can play a role, how quickly things can escalate online. This involves a 19-year-old woman in community college in Oregon. Her chemistry lab partner, Brian, was much older, early 40s.
And at first, it might just seem like awkwardness. Maybe he doesn't get social cues. He's walking her to lunch, waiting outside the bathroom. Yeah. A little too persistent. But those subtle things, that persistence, can be the first sign, right? The initial boundary testing.
Exactly. She gives him her number just for lab notes, she thought. And that's when it flips. He starts calling her beautiful, asking about boyfriends, touching her arm, her waist, even starts giving her massages.
Whoa, okay. Crossing major lines there.
And then makes this incredibly creepy joke. You're young enough to be my hot daughter.
Ugh. Yeah. That's the turning point. From awkward to overtly sexual, possessive. That joke, especially given the age gap, the power dynamic, it's grooming language, trying to normalize something deeply wrong.
Then he starts talking about his abnormally large dick, asks if she's a virgin, calls her a prude when she reacts badly.
Just pushing and pushing, ignoring her discomfort.
And then he starts showing up at her work, a place she never told him about.
Okay, that's escalation. That implies he's already been watching her, tracking her movements somehow. It's moved from just words to active surveillance.
The real confirmation, the aha moment, came at the library. Brian lets her use his computer. She checks the browser history, finds his Tumblr.
The digital trail, often very revealing.
Horrifyingly so. It had, disturbing NSFW posts of really young-looking girls, but the worst part, detailed posts about her.
Oh, no.
Calling her a vulnerable young girl, even though he also said she was too old for his liking but looked young. Fantasizing about sex with her, about her pleasuring herself, describing how she reacted to his creepy comments.
Documenting his own harassment.
Yeah. And admitting he stalked her social media, found out where she worked from Facebook, purposefully.
So this is where you see the stalker's internal world laid bare. The fantasies, the planning. It's concrete proof of intent, not just being creepy.
She calls the police immediately. But they tell her, basically, tough luck. Unless he physically harms her, they can't do much.
And that's the frustrating reality for so many victims, isn't it? That legal gap. You're living in fear. The threat feels real, but it's not physical enough yet for intervention. It's terrifying limbo.
A month goes by. Then her roommate gets grabbed from behind right at their apartment door.
Oh, God.
Luckily, her roommate is tough. She'd taken self-defense. She fights him off.
Thank goodness for that.
The police come, and right by the door, they find a backpack. Inside, rope, a knife, tape, and Rohypnol.
Okay, that confirms it. Immediate deadly danger. This was a planned attack. Abduction.
The victim immediately tells the police about Brian, shows them the Tumblr, and there's a new post.
What did it say?
It was about her avoiding him thinking she must have a boyfriend, and how he planned for them to run away together because she had truly loved him.
Which is completely delusional. But that post, combined with the backpack, that's critical evidence linking his fantasy directly to his actions.
So long story short, Brian gets arrested. They find child pornography on his computer too. He's going away for a long time.
As he should.
But the victim, she's left wondering, what if I didn't call in sick to work that day? What if he grabbed me instead? Would I still be alive?
And that what if, that's the psychological scar, isn't it? The trauma of knowing how close it came, the sheer luck involved in escaping, it stays with you.
Our next story is particularly chilling because it starts so young. The victim was only 10 years old. She started noticing this man at her swimming lessons, a man who just seemed to be everywhere.
And that's so difficult when it's a child. Their initial feelings of unease, that gut instinct, it can sometimes be dismissed by adults. Oh, you're just imagining things, which is incredibly dangerous. We have to listen to kids.
She describes him really vividly. Tall, thin, pointy nose, kind of button eyes, short gray hair, skin that was unusually red. Always wearing black, always had a camera around his neck.
The camera is a huge red flag right there.
He started just staring at her at the pool. Then suddenly he was at the grocery store, the mall, outside her school. Every single Friday night at swimming lessons.
That constant presence, the surveillance, it's a classic grooming tactic, trying to normalize his presence in her life. And the camera suggests documentation for awful reasons.
Then, 2 years later, he actually shows up at her school, tries to pick her up, claiming he's her uncle.
Wow, the audacity.
She knew immediately it was him, told the office staff, this man is not my uncle. Smart kid.
Very smart. Thank goodness she spoke up.
He didn't stop, though. Started waiting outside the school during lunch breaks, waving at her, tried to lure her over with chocolate bar.
That's, textbook predatory behavior. Trying to exploit a child's trust with bait. It's moved from watching to actively trying to abduct her.
Her dad got involved then. They contacted the police, and they discovered this guy was a convicted sex offender.
Of course he was.
And on his camera, hundreds and hundreds of photos of her, some taken by zooming into her bedroom window at her house.
Oh, that's horrifying. The violation of safety in her own home. Just hundreds of photos. It shows how intense and long-standing this obsession was, recording private moments.
Thankfully, they were able to get a restraining order. She hasn't seen him since.
That's a relief, a positive outcome legally. But you know, the psychological impact of knowing that happened, that someone violated your home, your privacy like that, especially as a child, that lasts. That feeling of being watched.
Okay, story number 4. This one comes from a 20-year-old woman working at Subway. She mentions how she tries to be nice to everyone, even the creepy ones, which, is often expected in customer service.
And that's a real vulnerability, isn't it? That expectation of politeness. Stalkers exploit it. They misread basic courtesy as interest, and the employee feels trapped. They have to be nice, but they also feel unsafe.
So this guy, late 30s, maybe early 40s, starts coming in daily for 2 weeks straight. He was apparently fascinated by her stretched earlobes and piercings. Would just sit at a table and stare at her for like 2 hours every day.
That prolonged staring is unnerving. It's a power move.
Kept asking for her number. Said he had some plugs and tunnels, jewelry for stretched ears he wanted to give her.
Using a supposed shared interest as a pretext.
Then one day, she's working alone. He walks past the store quickly. Then the phone rings. It's him. He asks, "This is the girl with the nice ears, right?" And then, "Are you alone in the back room right now?"
Chilling. That confirms he was watching, waiting for her to be isolated. It's moved from staring to actively checking her vulnerability, probing.
She hangs up, texts her manager, totally freaked out. He calls back, starts asking even weirder stuff. What she'd do with him if they were locked in a room together, if she had a boyfriend, why she was playing hard to get.
The rapid escalation into explicit fantasy, aggression, he's losing control.
Her manager takes the next call, listens, and the look on the manager's face was apparently terrifying. She threatened to call the police.
Good for the manager. Creating that boundary involving authority, even verbally, was crucial there.
Okay, but then a week later, she's clocking out, walking to her car, and she sees him by her car, looking inside. And she realizes with horror she'd left her back door unlocked. Just forgot. She watches him crawl inside her car and shut the door.
My God, just waiting for her, knowing her routine, exploiting that one mistake. That's not just obsession anymore, that's premeditated. That's an ambush plan.
Her manager saw it too, locked the store, called 911 immediately. The police had to drag him out of her car, and when they searched him,
What did they find?
a butcher knife, rope, and a rag soaked in chloroform.
Jesus, yeah. That confirms everything. A full abduction kit.
The victim said, "If I hadn't looked up when I did, I would probably be dead right now."
And she's probably right. It's a terrifying reminder that behavior that seems just creepy or persistent can hide truly deadly intentions, those tools. There was a clear plan to abduct and harm, maybe kill her. Trusting your gut is so important.
All right, our last story is, it's terrifying in a different way. For what almost happened, what was happening without anyone knowing. It's about 2 friends living together. Small apartment, 5th floor, Lower East Side.
And this one's unique because the danger was completely invisible to them. Until it was revealed in this really tragic, sudden way. Their everyday comfort, their feeling of safety at home was actually a huge vulnerability they had no clue about.
Yeah, their building was right next to a 4-story building. So their living room window looked out over the roof of the building next door. They said they rarely bothered drawing the curtains, often left the window unlocked, didn't think anything of it.
Easy to do in your own home, you feel safe.
Then one night, they hear this huge crash outside. They look out the window and see the body of a man. Sprawled in the alleyway, 5 floors below. He was dead.
Just discovered like that. Not a confrontation, just the aftermath of something awful.
The police investigate. They find a wooden plank near his body.
A plank.
Yeah. They figured out this guy had been watching them for who knows how long. And that night, he decided he was going to cross the gap. From the roof next door over to their 5th floor window using just that wooden plank.
That is incredibly risky. Desperate.
And in his pocket, they found a small knife.
Wow. So the intent was clear. The audacity, the risk he took, plus the knife. It shows how disturbed he was, how dangerous. And they were that close to him getting into their apartment. inches away from extreme danger, and they never even knew he existed.
Understandably, this was incredibly traumatizing for both of them. Even though it happened back in 2012, they don't live there anymore. They still say they have trouble feeling safe alone in their homes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it shatters that fundamental sense of security. Knowing your safe space, your home, was targeted like that, even if you didn't succeed, that violation sticks with you. The knowledge that an unseen threat was right there.
So these stories, they're really stark reminders, aren't they? How dangerous obsession can become, from the sort of slow burn psychological torment to immediate terrifying physical threats. These victims' lives were just completely changed.
Absolutely. And the common threads are striking. That pattern of escalation, the total disregard for boundaries, personal space, consent, and often, underneath it all, profound mental distress driving the perpetrator. It really hammers home the need to be aware, aware of the signs maybe in our own lives or for people around us. Small things can become very big, very dangerous things.
So what's the takeaway for you listening? These aren't just scary stories. They're really valuable insights into how obsession can progress. And maybe most importantly, they underscore how critical it is to trust your instincts. That feeling when something is just off. Even if it's subtle, don't dismiss it.
Yeah, that gut feeling is often your first line of defense. And it raises a bigger question too, I think. In our world now, where so much information is out there, online, digitally, how do we balance being open and connected with being vigilant? What steps do we need to take to protect our boundaries, both online and in the physical world?
That's a really powerful thought to end on. How do we navigate that balance? Thank you for joining us for this really intense deep dive into these unsettling stories. We hope it gave you some perspective, maybe something to think about. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep those eyes peeled. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into fascinating sources.